Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. We're carrying on with the season preview series today, and today we'll be focusing on the New York Giants. Now, for those of you who haven't seen one of these episodes before, I will be going through my projected starters for the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Of course, we're in the midst of camp and preseason has just started up. But I'm pretty confident this will be roughly how the team lines up at the beginning of September when the games begin to count. I'll then be going through the schedule, just sort of loosely highlighting what I believe are going to be the key areas for this team before giving my projected record for the 2017 season, and then highlighting what I consider the three key areas for this team to potentially make a run into the playoffs, possibly advance to another Super Bowl. Now, these areas, they may be positions of weakness, they may be positions that aren't necessarily huge strengths, but they need to be the perceived strength that they are. So, we'll hop right in with the offensive starters. At quarterback, of course, it's going to be Eli Manning. I'm very dubious about him at this point. I thought last year was one of his worst seasons as a pro, and one of the difficult parts of it is trying to figure out whether that was a function of the offensive line, which really struggled in pass protection and a non-existent running game, or if it was just his arms starting to decline, because it just did not look like himself, and especially throwing deep, he really struggled getting much velocity on the ball. Looked a bit tentative at times, but that I probably would put down to the poor pass protection that he received all year. The weapons around him as well wasn't ideal. Of course, they had Odell Beckham, but they didn't have much else. So I think it's a big year for Eli. It has to be better. The running back position, this is a group that's really struggled to have an impact over the last several seasons. I suspect Paul Perkins will be the starter. He played reasonably well towards the end of last season, showed a little bit of something. This team hasn't made much of an effort to improve this group significantly, so you have to think they're somewhat happy with him. Need to see a bit more of him, but he did show a little bit of quickness, a little bit of power that makes you think he's got the ability to carry 15 times a game, which is, I think, all they're going to need. It's going to be a very pass-heavy attack. They've got Shane Vereen, who will be the backup or receiving back. That's his role. Assuming he can come back healthy. He has had some issues. Again, this isn't a group that you're going to look at and think it's going to scare anybody. They just need to get enough balance to at least have teams have to consider that this team might run the ball on first down. The wide receiver group, this looks like a very, very good group. My one concern is the depth, but the starters look fantastic on paper. Odell Beckham Jr., of course, one of the top wide receivers in football. I don't care too much for the histrionics, but the man can play football. Brandon Marshall comes in as the number 2. He'll give this team a true red zone threat and a physical presence on the outside. I think he offers a very nice contrast to Beckham's game. And Sterling Shepard, who impressed me as a rookie last year, you suspect him and he'll get some slot duty, but I do think Odell Beckham will move around, so you might see Shepard lining up outside some of the time. He's currently injured, may not see as many snaps, of course, well, not necessarily snaps, but targets as last year with Brandon Marshall and the new rookie tight end on the team. But if he can build on what he did last season, then he's going to be a very positive weapon for this team. This is a really good group. And at tight end, Evan Ingram, the first round pick. Always difficult to project rookie tight ends. It has been mentioned on the NFL site, and it's true. It's not a great history of tight ends being massively productive. But Ingram won't have to be. He's got there's a lot of guys around him. I think he'll essentially be used as a Jordan Reed type tight end. That's what his skill set looks like to me. He's a fast, athletic. He's basically a glorified wide receiver rather than a traditional tight end. I can't see him being used as a blocker in particular this season. You probably don't want to bulk him up too much either in case he ends up losing some of that speed, because this guy does have elite speed for the position. That's what, to me, really separates him from his contemporaries in this draft class. Even OJ Howard, I don't think he can run quite like this kid. Again, he's going to have the opportunity to put up some big numbers just because of the guys around him. The position does concern me, but he'll get an opportunity. I've got no doubt about that. Now on to the real concerning area for this team on the offensive side. Well, other than running back, I guess, the offensive line. At tackle, Eric Flowers, and I suspect DJ Fluker, if he can get healthy, will be the tackles. Fluker at right, Flowers on the left. That's what I suspect. I wouldn't be surprised to see Fluker lining up at guard. I worry about either one of these two. I think if Fluker's healthy, he's a very good right tackle. He's a fantastic run blocker. He's a bit slow-footed in pass pro, which is why I stick him out on the right. Flowers has been an insufficient caliber left tackle, is the nice way of putting it. He's struggled in just about every facet to this point. He does have a lot of physical talent. It's just not come up across yet. He struggles with technique, doesn't play with nearly enough power to play in this league. He's a big concern if he doesn't step up and improve significantly. Worry about these two in pass pro. I really do. The guard position, Justin Pugh, very good player. And I suspect John Jerry, I think, again, this is rather like with Fluker, they're going to look to run a bit more this year. I think having Jerry and Fluker on the same side at least gives them a threat of that. Again, Jerry, not someone you want in pass protection. He's not ideal there, but I think if you're going to try and beef up the run game, they have to get it. The pass protection's not like they've got anyone else on the roster that jumps out as a big upgrade. I think it's just they're just going to have to kind of bite the bullet and accept that as a weakness on the right-hand side of the line. And the centre, Weston Richburg, I think he's a fine player. It's just been difficult to judge. This line really has had struggles over the last couple of seasons, last year in particular. And at kicker, Mike Nugent. So yeah, this group, I mean, you look at the weapons in the passing game, it looks great. Everything else around it looks questionable. Whether those guys can make this offense go, I'm not sure. I am very critical of how Eli played last year. Maybe that might be a harsh way of putting it. Very critical of the production they got at that position, and whether that's all on Eli. I mean, it's definitely not all on him. The struggles around him were legitimate. I mean, on paper, it looks really good. Other than that line, I can't see them being enormously productive. It's going to be, I think, once again, a fairly one-dimensional offense, and I think we're going to see a lot of Eli running for his life. I just can't see the line coming together, particularly when you look at some of the defences they've got to play this year. So I think we're looking at a fairly middle-of-the-road offense, maybe even below average, which is a shame when you look at those weapons in the receiving game. But when you look at the defensive side, this is a team that's probably not going to have to score 25 plus points a game to win most weeks. You start at the defensive end position, you've got Olivier Vernon and Jason Pierre-Paul. The thing that has been most shocking to me about Pierre-Paul since he's come back from the fireworks incident is how well he's played the run. He has played the run better than he did earlier in his career, where you could argue he's a more productive pass rusher, but I think he's been a better player. Last season was probably the best all-round season of his career for me. Vernon isn't one of those guys who's going to get you a huge amount of sacks every year, but he will generate pressure, and he's a fantastic run player. So between the two of them, they're getting very effective production. They're getting enough. Should get enough pressure from the two of them, and they're both going to play the run well. So that's a real strength. You look at the defensive tackle position. Damon Harrison, one of the best nose tackles in football, playing in the 4-3. He really got to show off that he's probably a better pass rusher than a lot of people gave him credit for. He was an absolute monster last year. No reason for me to think that's going to change. I love watching him play. Very good player. And I think Dalvin Tomlinson will end up getting into this rotation. I just think he's got more talent, particularly as a pass rusher, than the other tackles in the group. As a result, I think he'll break into that rotation pretty early and maybe not going to be as disciplined or good against the run as some of the other guys. When you've got these three around him, if he can just generate some pressure, then frankly he'll be doing a good job for him. Big fan of this front four. Big fan. It looks like it's going to be dangerous. The outside linebackers, for me, the linebacker is a giant question mark. Once again, this team hasn't had a clear star at the linebacker position in a while. I mean, seems like forever. So I don't know how this group's going to look. These are all pretty much just shots in the dark. I've got Jonathan Casillas as one of them, simply because of experience. Not great experience, being on some very poor Saints defences, as well as, a couple of years now in New York. Him, and I've got Devon Kennard, because I think they need somebody with a degree of athleticism back there. Try and cover guys. Don't feel enormously confident about either of them. Middle linebacker BJ Goodson, who I'm not particularly familiar with. I was looking at the middle linebacker list. I am not actually particularly sure who any of these guys are. So I think this is the one big issue on what I think is one of the better units. I think all these spots have to be wide open when you look at them on paper. And if something's going to hold this group back, this position is likely to be it. Moving on to the secondary, I mean, these guys played very well last year. If it wasn't for perhaps the Broncos, they'd probably get a lot more attention. Janoris Jenkins, who I thought had been great for the Rams, but they decided not to take a chance on him because he has had some issues in the past. But last year he played fantastic. He really did have a point to prove. He's one of the better physical man type corners in the league. He can really run for a guy his size. Just did a fantastic job. I think at this point you could easily argue he's one of the top corners in football. Eli Apple played pretty well as a rookie. Played well enough that it allowed them to move Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie to the inside, which is something I never thought I would see, let alone see him do well at, because he's not a player that screams willing tackler to me, but he played well there last year. Apple should only get better. It's his second year again. He's another big physical corner. They've got three of them there. Well, maybe Cromartie's not the most physical guy, but these guys they've all got length. They can all run. I think it gives them a real advantage trying to cover tight ends when you compare it to some of the other teams in the league. Similar, not quite on level of the Broncos three, but they are three deep at the position, and it's going to be really hard to see anyone breaking into that rotation. I think they'll get good production from these guys again. And at safety, Landon Collins with a truly transformational second year. He was absolute dynamite last season, has played as well as anyone at the position. There's no reason to think he's going to take a step backwards. He looks like he's a stud. And Darian Thompson, he's got to be looked at as the weak spot on the defence. I don't mean, the secondary, and I don't mean that as a criticism of him. That's how it is. He's a solid player. He's been on some good defences, so it's probably harder to judge him than some of the other guys. But frankly, all he's got to do is a solid job as the last line of the defence, and let the guys around him go make plays, and the punter Brad Wing. This group looks great. The linebacker position aside, that's a giant problem. But the front four, the defence and the secondary, they're as good as it gets in the league at the moment on paper, and frankly the way they played, particularly down the stretch last season. So I'm very confident that this unit's going to be really good. You've got the pure run stopping ability as well as the ability to get enough pressure, and a secondary that can hold up. The backers aren't necessarily going to have to be great, and I just think I don't think they're going to have to be. I don't think they will be, but I do think this is one of the top defences in football. I can't imagine them not finishing in the top 10. I think they're going to be a real nightmare for some teams this year. I expect to see a lot of turnovers from these guys. It's for that reason that my projected record for these guys is pretty positive, in spite of my concerns on the offensive side of the ball. I'm as confident in the defence as I'm not confident in the offence. Last year this team went 11-5. This year the schedule's a bit tougher. As I've said many times, I think the AFC West just looks like the most difficult division to play against. The NFC East is just unpredictable as all heck. So I've got this team going 10-6 this year. Had the Cowboys and the Eagles also at 10-6, but I'm starting to reconsider the Cowboys with some of the injuries, some of the suspensions that have happened since I did that preview. I'm not so sure that I'm as confident in them as I was. So I've currently got the Giants going 10-6. I will give my playoff predictions and an update to any of these records that I suspect will change. Because as you can imagine, I started this 3 weeks ago. There have been some injuries that have had significant impacts on some of these projections I made. I stand by them. If teams had stayed healthy, I would stand by them. But, things change. And 10-6 I think seems fair for the Giants. Simply put, the start of their schedule, they've got a bye in week 8, the first 7 games. This team does not get an opportunity to relax. They've got the Cowboys, then the Lions, then the Eagles, followed by the Bucks, and 3 of those games are on the road, followed by the Chargers, who with this offensive line you do not want to play. Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram could do a lot of damage. The Broncos and the Seahawks. I mean, for a team that I have major concerns on the offensive line, I think playing the Eagles, they've got a great front four. It would appear to me, Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox are both absolute studs. The Buccaneers have a good D-line, I think, heading into this year. Ayers is a fine player. Gerald McCoy. The Chargers with Bosa and Ingram. The Broncos have Von Miller. Possibly Shane Ray if he's healthy, who impressed me last year. And the Seahawks got Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill. It's not going to be easy. And those are all teams that, maybe not so much the Chargers with those injuries, but even then, these are all teams that could be in playoff contention. It does let up a little bit after that, because they are playing against the NFC West. So they then get the Rams and the Niners, but it is just not. I look at the schedule, it's not an easy one. Having this team go 10-6 is more a testament to how good I think this defence is. I think they're going to be one of the best units in the league. And whilst I think the offence will struggle, I just think Eli's got to do a good job not turning the ball over. And these receivers will make enough plays for this team to have some success. Once they get to the playoffs, I think it'll be rough. I just can't see a team with this offensive line coming together there. But I do think they make it. The 3 key areas, though, for the team to even get that far, and especially if they do to get further, are ones I've hinted at throughout the show. First, the linebackers. The rest of the defence looks great. They've just got to not let the rest of them down. Just play disciplined and play good, solid, fundamental football. And you have to think this defence is going to come together. That's the glaring weakness. Particularly, in the passing game where you've seen like some other teams just getting picked apart over the middle by tight ends and dinky dunk type stuff. If they can stop that happening, then this defence is going to do a stellar job. The offensive line, it just has to be better. You cannot play. They can't be much worse than they were last year. If so, all these receivers they have, it's going to be redundant. You're just not going to have time to use them as effectively as you'd like. It's going to be reduced to short stuff. That's not really what you want Brandon Marshall doing. That's not really what you want Evan Ingram doing. They're going to need to be able to hold up better to make the most of this stuff. The runners are another thing, and my final point is the run game, and that links to the O-line, so I'm going to go through these two sort of together. There's no real standouts in this running back group. Perkins showed flashes last year, but you can't look at them now and think, right, there's a guy there who's going to go for 1,200 yards. The line is going to have to work with them. They're going to have to be better because these guys aren't going to rip teams apart without that help. There's just no possibility of it, and there's got to be more balance. Last year, teams could just sit in coverage, tee off on Eli pass rushing, and there was very little threat. And they didn't even need to blitz because the offensive line just struggled to hold up. The run game will help the O-line pass protect. The talent isn't there for them to pass protect. I'm very confident in saying that. So the run game has to be better, and the O-line just needs to be better all around. But in particular, they need to help that run game. so that they can help themselves in pass protection. If anything's going to hold this team back, it's that aspect of the offense. Unless what we saw from Eli last year was maybe a hint at who he is. But there you have it. That's the 2017 New York Giants. As always, let me know, what do you guys think? Is there anyone you've seen in camp or are looking forward to seeing in preseason you think might crack this roster? Give us a shout. Got the Cover Zero Facebook page. You got the comment section down below. Got my Twitter. Follow me there at Simon Conboy. Always fun to talk ball with you guys. As always, if you've enjoyed the show, like, share, subscribe. We did our first weekly roundtables, kind of podcast type thing, me and a couple of my friends. I think that was really good. Hoping to make those a regular thing, and I think the quality of them is really going to improve as we do it more, and of course the season gets more interesting because it will become the actual season. So check those out, as well as the rest of the season previews. Pretty much most of the league covered at this point, just wrapping things up with some of the top teams. And thank you so much for watching as ever. Really do appreciate it if you could like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon. It'd be greatly appreciated. Really do appreciate people watching the show. I say it a lot, but really do. It's been a pleasure. Have a great evening, and go Bucks.